The metal door clanged shut behind me, and I felt the sound in my spine. Ethan's voice still rang in my ears, sharp and smug. "Rot in prison, Mom." "Everything's ours now." I stood in the middle of the cell, still wearing the blouse I'd ironed that morning. I thought we were meeting the estate lawyer to finalize the land use document Ethan had rushed me about. I thought it was a formality, a signature, a quick talk over coffee. Instead, I was escorted out of the building in cuffs. No explanation, no time to ask questions, just the silence of betrayal. They said I was delusional, that I'd shown signs of cognitive decline. Brittany used words like confused, erratic, legally vulnerable. I heard her rehearsed concern as she signed papers I never approved. Her voice was flat, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. The deputy who took my fingerprints asked if I needed medication. I told him no. He didn't press. They think quiet means unstable. That age equals weakness. But I remembered every detail of the last 6 months, every request, every time Ethan came by with just one more thing for me to sign. I remembered his eyes darting away when I asked too many questions. Now I sat on a hard bench, the walls dull and yellowed. No window, no clock. Just a flickering light and the staleness of recycled air. My hands rested in my lap, wrists red from the cuffs. I kept my fingers curled, the weight of my ring pressing against the skin beneath. It was the only thing they hadn't taken. A wide gold band heavier than it looked. It wasn't flashy, just solid and old. My husband had designed it himself, a quiet mark of something only 3 people were ever meant to understand. I hadn't looked at it in years. Not really. But now I couldn't stop staring. The door buzzed, then opened again. A woman in uniform stepped in, holding a clipboard. "You'll be processed in an hour," she said. I nodded and waited. She left me alone again after the clipboard, the door clicking shut, like the period at the end of a sentence no one wanted to explain. I sat still, back straight, palms flat on my knees. My blouse clung damp against my spine, though the air was cool. I'd spent my whole life solving problems quietly. You do what needs doing, then you move on. But sitting there, legs going numb, I realized this wasn't a problem I could fix with a phone call or a well-written letter. The door opened, not with the rush of protocol, but with something slower, measured. He stepped in tall gray at the temples, uniform pressed, but not proud. His badge read, Warden T. Cole, and he looked like a man who'd seen too much of everything and grown tired of pretending he hadn't. He scanned the clipboard the officer had left behind. His eyes lingered a beat longer than necessary, as if he already knew what it said before reading it. Then his gaze lowered to my hand. The pause wasn't long, barely 2 seconds, but it was clean, deliberate. He stared at the ring like someone remembering something he wasn't supposed to say out loud. I didn't move. His face shifted slightly, something behind the eyes narrowing, not suspicion, not pity. Something else. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. He stepped closer, the door still open behind him. No one else followed. He leaned down, not enough to threaten, just enough, so no camera would catch the words, and said, low, "Tonight, you'll know." Then he straightened, nodded once, and walked out. The door closed again. I stared at the dull wall ahead of me, pulse steady, breathing slow. I didn't know what I was supposed to be waiting for, but now I was certain I wasn't waiting alone. The lights flickered above me, once then settled. Somewhere outside, a phone began to ring. They smiled like winners. I watched the clip on a grainy monitor outside the holding area. Ethan and Brittany behind a podium, hands clasped like a political couple. Her hair curled perfectly, his tie just loose enough to look casual, but still expensive. The banner behind them read, Community Legacy Night. The reporter said they were donating $10,000 to the local historical society on behalf of the Marin Family Trust. I didn't know whether to laugh or be sick. There was no trust. There were only assets, property I'd held in my name for decades. Ethan had asked me to consider forming a trust for the grandkids' future, but nothing had ever been filed. Not legally. Not by me. They invented one. Warden Cole came back with a paper cup of water, no lid. He handed it to me gently, like someone who knew not to spill a drop. I asked him if I was being transferred to county. He shook his head. "You'll stay here tonight?" he said. No transfer. No explanation followed. No lawyer either. Just that same low hum in the hallway and the weight of stillness behind every door. After an hour, I asked for a call. He nodded. I gave him the number. Didn't say the name, just the digits. But instead of writing it down or passing it along, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a different device, small, dark, not part of the jail's standard setup. He dialed, waited, then handed me the receiver. The voice on the other end was cautious, clipped. "Who is this?" I hesitated for the briefest second. "Then it's Callista." They moved. Silence. "Then is it real this time?" My fingers tightened on the phone. "Yes." He didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. If I was calling this number, then things were worse than we'd planned for. My husband had called him our last line of defense, before cancer took everything except his clarity. "I'll take care of it," Elias said. "Tonight." I set the phone down. Warden Cole locked the drawer and nodded once. "Callista." His voice cracked, just enough to sound human again. "Is it real this time?" "It is." I didn't have to say anything else. Not the arrest, not the false charges, not the handcuffs. He knew. There was a time I thought Elias was excessive. He and my husband used to talk in codes, draw up flowcharts, discuss contingencies like they were planning for war. "Kids change," Elias used to warn. "The world changes them faster than you can raise them." I dismissed it then. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't want to imagine needing those safeguards. Now I was grateful for every whispered conversation they'd ever had. "Sit tight," he said. "No public defender. I've already made the call. You'll have someone by morning." And not someone easily rattled. I asked because I had to. "How bad is it?" He sighed softly. Paper rustling in the background. "They didn't just fake your signature. They filed sale documents. Everything. Your house, the bakery shares, the lake lots, all listed as transferred to a holding company in Delaware last week." I closed my eyes. I remembered Brittany talking about estate simplification, Ethan promising to take some weight off my shoulders. I remembered trusting them willingly. They named themselves sole inheritors. Elias added, his voice quieter now. "As if you were already dead. No waiting period. No legal delays. Just clean removal. It wasn't just theft. It was erasure." "They're not even careful," he muttered. "Too fast. Too greedy." He wasn't angry. He was calm, colder than I remembered. He was already in motion, dusting off the parts of himself that hadn't been used in years. "Stay calm. Do nothing. The next step doesn't come from you." I nodded before realizing he couldn't see me. "Thank you. You made the call," he said. "That's all that matters." The line went dead. Outside my cell, the hallway lights flickered again. Inside, I waited with my hands folded and the ring warm against my skin. At exactly 9, the door buzzed and opened. A woman stepped inside, dressed in gray from collar to heel. No badge, no clipboard. Just a folder tucked beneath one arm and a presence that didn't ask for permission. "I'm here on behalf of Sterling Estate Defense," she said. Warden Cole didn't question it. He took her card, nodded once, and unlocked my cell. "She's not going anywhere," he told someone down the hall. Then he disappeared without another word. The woman introduced herself with a small nod. "Sable Cortez." She gestured for me to sit across from her at the metal table. then opened the folder with care like a ritual she'd performed 100 times. Each page was slipped out and placed precisely in front of me. There was Ethan smiling as he forged a signature on a notary form, a timestamp in the corner, a second photo Brittany in our kitchen logging into a joint investment account I never gave her access to, and finally a screenshot of the property transfer agent's email chain, hidden broker, shell buyer, matching dates. I said nothing. Sable didn't wait for questions. Your husband built redundancy into every asset. Your real signature is registered in a legacy biometric database. Theirs aren't. The false documents are already flagged. I exhaled. Not relief, just clarity. They filed for accelerated liquidation through a proxy in Delaware, she continued. But the moment they tried to move the second lot, the system locked. Your husband anticipated this. Why? I asked quietly. Why go this far? She didn't blink. Because he knew what ambition looks like without loyalty. I looked at the ring again. I'd thought it was just sentiment. Turns out it was also a key. Everything they've touched is under injunction now, she said. Their accounts, the fake trust. Even the land title office has frozen their access. They moved quickly. But we moved first. I closed the folder and leaned back. Sable slid it into her bag without another word. Then she checked her watch. You'll want to see what they do next, she said. Tonight they're hosting a dinner. That night, Ethan and Brittany threw a dinner party. At my house. Not theirs. Mine. The photo came through on a secure line, Sterling's investigator discreet as always. The dining room glowed warm with soft light. My chandelier. My long oak table. The watercolor painting I brought home from Charleston 3 decades ago, still hanging slightly crooked because I'd always meant to fix the frame. Ethan stood at the head of the table in one of my late husband's blazers, raising a glass like he'd earned the right. Brittany sat at his side, draped in a silky champagne dress, her hair twisted just enough to look effortless. On her ears, my pearl drops, the ones I'd tucked in a blue fabric pouch with my wedding band, hidden in the drawer beneath the scarves I never wore. She must have found them weeks ago. The guests applauded a toast about generational growth and legacy redefined. Legacy. Outside that room, Sterling's legal team worked like clockwork. Sable had filed the emergency injunction that afternoon. The injunction hit before the wine was even poured. The joint accounts, frozen. The real estate registry, flagged. Every document Brittany had filed now under review for fraud. Even the card used to order the floral centerpiece was declined, and the florist notified. They didn't notice yet. The laughter rolled on in the background as if they'd truly built something. But they hadn't built anything. They'd only stolen. The walls they decorated weren't theirs. The forks they used were mine. The linen napkins ironed by my hands sat folded on their laps like blessings they never earned. I watched each image come through calmly, as if I were seeing a play performed by strangers in a house I used to know. The investigator's last message was a time-stamped clip, Ethan clinking his glass to Brittany's. They smiled, wide, unaware. The doorbell rang. A beat passed. Then another message arrived. They just opened the door. The next morning, Sable pulled up to the gate like she'd done it before. My gate. The freeze order had gone through. Every asset tied to my name was now locked pending investigation. 2 officers stood near the porch plainclothes, but clearly waiting. One nodded when he saw Sable. The other held the court packet under his arm. I didn't hesitate. I didn't need to knock. Ethan answered the door with half a croissant in his hand, flakes on his shirt. He stopped chewing. The blood drained from his face. Behind him, Brittany appeared in the hallway, smoothing her blouse. Her voice came first. "We thought you were gone," I said, stepping through the threshold. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask permission. I walked past them through the entryway I'd swept for 20 years into the living room that once held birthday candles and Thanksgiving centerpieces. The furniture was rearranged. The art stayed, but they'd covered the table with something metallic and cold. The soft scent of eucalyptus lingered my candles. One of the last ones I'd bought before Brittany started replacing them with sterile fragrances that made the house feel like a showroom. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing evenly. Then I turned and handed the notarized injunction to the officers. "This is the residence in question," I said. Ethan's mouth opened, words pouring out too quickly to follow excuses. Confusion, misplaced charm. Brittany said nothing. Her arms folded tight across her chest, lips pressed thin. The lead officer read the order aloud. "This property is subject to legal hold. Parties not listed as primary occupants must vacate." "Vacate," Ethan repeated. "But this is our no Sable," said behind me, her voice crisp. "It's not." Neither of them moved. So the officers did. One stepped forward and opened the hallway closet. The other began photographing drawer contents. This time, no one offered them coffee. I stood still as the front door stayed open and a cold breeze moved through the room. Upstairs, someone flushed a toilet. Back in my room, my real room, I opened the top drawer of the old chest beside the window. The scent of dry cedar lingered faintly, clinging to fabric that hadn't been moved in over a year. The drawer stuck a little. I tugged gently. Beneath the false bottom right, where I'd last hidden it, sat a narrow file with no label, just a red seal across the flap, and the faint impression of my husband's initials pressed in gold HF 47. I broke the seal with a letter opener, hands steady. Inside was the contingency file, the one he said to only use if I ever felt erased. Old school protections. Paper trails, handwritten notes, notarized backup. And the biometric authorization tag, mine. That evening, just past 7, Elias called. "They tried to pull funds from the equity reserve," he said. "Used your name. Attached your old passport scan and a doctored voice sample." He paused. "They failed. But they tried." I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. How far did they get far enough to trigger every lock we built? The system flagged their device location and IP. The moment the ring wasn't present in the biometric scan, the firewall lit up. "It's all recorded." He exhaled just once. Then quieter. "They even used your maiden name." Like that would fool the database. The ring I wore wasn't just sentimental. It had been encrypted years ago, tied to a system only Elias and my husband understood. A legacy tool built not for beauty, but for defense. When worn, it confirmed presence. When absent, it warned. And now it had spoken. "They'll know by morning," Elias said. "The freeze just expanded. They can't sell, withdraw, or hide." I traced the edge of the ring, feeling the tiny etching beneath my fingertip. I used to think it was just a mark of love. Now I knew it was also a shield. "They're not going to stop," I said. "No," Elias replied. "But neither are we." The call ended. I reached for the second file. The one with their names on it. 2 weeks later I saw them again, but this time it was across a courtroom. They sat at the defendant's table in matching beige government-issued and stiff around the shoulders. Brittany's hair was tied back too tightly, and Ethan kept fiddling with a pen that had no cap. He didn't look at me. Not once. I wore navy slacks, a soft cream blouse, and the same shoes I used to wear to Sunday brunch. I hadn't come to perform. I came to finish something. The judge entered briskly, already holding the thick file. No jury needed. The evidence stood on its own. Pages rustled. Screens lit up with timestamps, signatures, surveillance captures. Ethan leaning over a forged document. Brittany logging into accounts that didn't belong to her. The courtroom stayed silent through most of it. The hum of the air vent was louder than their defense. Brittany tried to speak when asked, but her voice cracked on the second sentence. She swallowed hard and sat down. Ethan mumbled something about misunderstanding, but his lawyer didn't let it go further. I didn't need to speak. The documents did. After 30 minutes, the judge set down the papers, took off his glasses, and delivered the ruling. The power of attorney was declared invalid. The trust was deemed fabricated. Their access to all assets in my name was revoked. And then came the part no one in their camp seemed ready for a permanent bar from any future legal or financial claim to my estate. Criminal charges, fraud, forgery, exploitation were pending review by the district attorney's office. Ethan finally looked up then. His eyes met mine for less than a second before dropping again. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even ashamed. He looked confused, like a man who never imagined the story wouldn't end with him on top. They were escorted out a side door separate from the public exit. I stood and walked through the front. No handcuffs, no whispers. Just the echo of my own footsteps, steady and free. Outside, the wind had changed. I headed home. I stayed, not because I needed to prove anything, and not because I had nowhere else to go. I stayed because it was mine. I didn't repaint the walls, didn't throw out the wine glasses they used. I let the house settle again, let it breathe, without being forced into someone else's image of what a legacy should look like. The keys are still where I always kept them. I didn't need to change the locks. They won't be coming back. Sable checks in once a month, short calls, no fuss. Elias sends cards with little notes scribbled in the margins, half legible, always ending with, "You were right to wait." A package came last week, no return address. Inside was a small silver compass, delicate and old. There was only a slip of paper with it typed neatly. Some things still point north. No signature, but I knew it was from Warden Cole. The ring stays on my finger. Not because I'm afraid not anymore, and not because it's a shield. That part of its job is done. I keep it on because it reminds me of who I was before I doubted myself, before I started handing over pieces of my life out of love and watching them be repackaged into something colder. It reminds me that silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's a door no one sees until it opens. I walk the garden again in the mornings. The soil is dry this winter, but I've started turning it myself. No hired help. Just me, my gloves, and the same rhythm I had years ago when things were simpler. They tried to erase me, but dignity isn't something you inherit. You take it back. And I did. The sun shifts against the window pane, now catching the gold of the ring, just enough to cast a small reflection across the table. I don't move it. I let it shine.